Hello, everybody, and welcome to Monday Night Travel with Rick Steves Europe. My name is Gabe Gunning, and I have the privilege of serving as your host this evening as we explore bustling Barcelona and beyond with a very special guest. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Spain tour guide extraordinaire, travel expert, and a good friend of mine, Mr. Rich Earl. Rich.
Hola.
Welcome to Monday Night Travel.
Thanks.
Hola.
Hola. Good
Now,
to be here.
I understand that you were just recently in Spain. What were you in Spain for?
I was doing 2 My Way Spain tours, which are unguided tours.
Okay. Yeah. What is a My Way tour? How is it different than a regular tour, if you will?
They are set up the same way as our regular tours, where we set up the hotels and the transportation for you. But what you do in each town is completely up to you. There's no guiding. I'm really there as more of a consultant to deal with all the logistical issues, hotels, the bus driver, those kind of things. I set up some optional activities for them that they have to pay for themselves. They're completely optional, but they're really more for set up for more independent travelers, people who want to kind of do things on their own timeline.
Okay. Very
I love them.
Yeah. And
they're my favorite kind of tour, actually.
Sounds nice to at least not have get to explore, but not have the stress of figuring out your own lodging and transportation all the time.
Exactly.
And I know maybe some viewers have been tour members of ours before and probably know that at the end of each tour, we have a survey for our tour members, and one of the questions we ask is, what was your wow moment? So I want to know from your last 2 tours, what would you say your wow moment was?
My wow moment is kind of always the same on this tour. It's in Granada. I do an optional dinner at a restaurant called the Carmen, which is on the hill, the Albaicin neighborhood overlooking the Alhambra. So we have this 7-course dinner with this fantastic view of the Alhambra right in front of us. And you get to see the Alhambra in the afternoon sun, then the sunset turns orange, and then in the dark, it's all lit up at night. And the tour members' faces are they're just in awe, because they know that tomorrow they're going to go visit the Alhambra, and it's sort of a nice little preview of what they're going to see. And even after going there all of these years, I'm still in awe of it. I love it.
One of my friends and I on our semester in Spain said that when we retired, we were going to just retire to the Alhambra and just buy it. I think it might be a bit much for the 2 of us, but maybe if you pitch in between the 3 of us, we could afford it.
We could afford it.
So, yeah. Excellent. Well, we're so excited to have you here with us tonight.
Thank you.
Tonight, we are going to, first, we're going to start out in Barcelona, a big bustling metropolis, a place that's on a lot of travelers' lists of places they really want to get to. But then after the hustle and bustle of the city, we're going to take some time to find some quieter Catalunian retreats to finish with. But we are going to start with Barcelona. Here we go.
Spain fills most of the Iberian Peninsula. The northeast corner is Catalunya. We'll explore its leading city, Barcelona, before side-tripping to Montserrat, Figueres, and Cadaqués. Barcelona has a rich history. Roman colony, Dark Age Visigothic capital, 14th century maritime power. And beyond all its great sights, be sure to appreciate its elegant sense of style and its Mediterranean knack for good living. The city's main square, Plaça Catalunya, is the center of the world for 7 million Catalan people.
So, Rich, my first time in Barcelona was about 11 years ago now, and my first memory of the city is standing in this Plaça Catalunya at the top of the Las Ramblas before walking down to the water and just looking at the huge plaza with the big buildings and all of the energy. I want to know, when was your first trip to Barcelona, and what was your first impression?
My first trip to Barcelona was on my very first trip to Europe in 1998. And I didn't really know what to expect for Barcelona. I'd heard from a lot of my friends who had lived there or studied there that it was their favorite city in Spain. And it was very different, I think, than what I expected. I think I expected a city like Madrid. And the thing that struck me the most was there seemed to be art everywhere. Even the street tiles are pieces of art, and the street lamps and the benches. And the thing that impressed me the most, and still to this day, is probably the Sagrada Familia Church.
Yeah, it is a church quite unlike any other, I would say.
Yes.
And we will be exploring it a little bit later on. but I'm excited to go on this trip of Barcelona with you. And I understand you brought us a little beverage. I'd like to start out with a little cheers as we begin this journey of Barcelona. And what did you bring us?
I brought us some cava, which
Cava.
cava is Spanish champagne.
Okay.
And it comes from the Catalunya region, and it's a sparkling wine, basically.
All right. Excellent. Well, the champagne of Spain.
Yes.
Salud. Salud. All right. Well, let's enjoy Barcelona together.
It's a lively people scene throughout the day. The square is decorated with statues honoring important Catalans. Catalunya has its own distinct language, history, and flag, which locals fly proudly next to Spain's flags on government buildings and all alone from their apartments. Catalunya has often been at odds with the central Spanish government in Madrid. During the 1930s, this area is one of the last pockets of resistance against the fascist dictator Francisco Franco. When he finally took power, he punished the region with 4 decades of repression. During this period, the people were forbidden to fly the Catalunian flag. Instead, to show their national spirit, they flew this, the flag of the Barcelona soccer team. Catalans consider themselves not part of a region, that's what Spain calls them, but a nation without a state. The Catalan language is irrevocably tied to the spirit and history of the Catalan people. Sure, everyone speaks Spanish, but these kids speak Catalan first.
So, Rich, as I've established in Monday Night Travel a few times, I'm a bit of a language nerd. I used to be a high school Spanish teacher, and I'm curious, what is the Catalan language like? Do you speak it? Do you think it's important that travelers to Catalunya and Barcelona speak some of it?
I don't speak Catalan myself. I know a few words and a few phrases just from traveling there. I don't think it's important that you have to learn Catalan as a language, but I think it is nice to learn a few phrases or a few words. Just it shows some respect for the local culture, and it shows people that you are really interested in them and their culture.
Well, we definitely want to communicate that to people that we're interested in them. It's always amazing to me how so many people speak English these days. Rick always says he's an example that you can just speak English fluently and still have great travels. But even Rick is insistent that it's important to learn a few phrases, to not come in with this sense of entitlement or just an assumption that everybody speaks English, and just delivering a few words in somebody's local tongue can really warm them up. So definitely. I understand that you have a few quick Catalan phrases that can help us when we're traveling that you are going to share with us.
Yeah, so these are just probably the most common words you might use, and you can really see the similarities between Spanish. Some people think Catalan, I've heard it being referred to as a mixture of Spanish and French. I don't know if that's really true. I think there are some elements of the French language in the language, but you can really see there's a similarity. So the word hello, for instance, in Castilian, or what we call Spanish, is hola. It's the same in Catalan, hola.
Hola. And what does Castilian mean? Why is that kind of synonymous with Spanish more?
Castilian is the language of Castile, which is one of the biggest regions of Spain, central Spain.
Oh, okay. Excellent. So, hola.
And then goodbye, adios in Spanish.
Adios.
And adeo.
Adeo. Oh, it's similar to adieu.
Adieu.
Like so long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, adieu. I never made that connection between adios and adieu, but now that I see adeo, that makes more sense.
Yeah. And then, of course, a very important phrase to learn in any language, I think, is thank you. So in Spanish, you'd say gracias. And in Catalan, gracias. So very
gracias.
Similar.
Gracias. And I heard different sounds on the C. I know some people say Barcelona with kind of the TH, and some say Barcelona. What would you say if you were in Catalunya?
They would say Barcelona, just like we would say.
Barcelona.
Barcelona, the TH sound is very Castilian.
Okay.
So it's very, like, for instance, I learned Latin American Spanish, where it's more of an S sound. So you would say Barcelona. But in Spain, and in especially Castile, the main region, the central region of Spain, they say S is like a TH sound.
Okay. Excellent. So Barcelona if we're in the rest of Spain, but if we're in Catalunya, Barcelona.
Barcelona. And then good morning, buenos dias in Spanish, or bon dia
Bon dia.
in Catalan,
Bon
like the
dia.
Portuguese, bon dia.
Oh, okay.
Very
So
similar.
more similar to Portuguese. Interesting.
And then, do you speak English? Habla usted inglés, or parles anglais?
Parles anglais. And then that's where you see more of the French, because the parler is more like the verb in French, I think.
Yeah,
So,
that looks very French
parles
to me.
anglais.
I don't speak French, but
Well, excellent. Thank you for those little tips. And hopefully you all can use some of those phrases the next time that you are traveling in Catalunya. Now let's continue on with our travels through Barcelona.
Barcelona's ever-popular strolling boulevard is the Ramblas. While souvenir shops and crowds of tourists have diluted its former elegance, it still offers an entertaining introduction to the city. The Ramblas Bird Market is a hit with kids. Traditionally, children bring their parents here to buy pets. Apartment dwellers find birds, fish, and bunnies easier to handle than dogs and cats. La Boqueria, just steps off the busy boulevard, is Barcelona's lively fish and produce market. Locals shop in the morning for the best and freshest selection. They say if you can't find it at the Boqueria, it's not worth eating. Wherever I travel, I enjoy the cafes and little eateries in the markets. Here at the Pinocchio Bar, even while he and his family are busy feeding shoppers, flamboyant Juan is happy to flash his trademark smile. Back on the Ramblas, the Carnival of Barcelona life continues. A variety of street entertainers vie creatively for your attention and your coins. The bottom of the Ramblas is marked by the Columbus Monument. It was here in Barcelona that the Spanish King Ferdinand and Queen Isabel welcomed Columbus home after his first trip to America. It's ironic that Barcelona would honor the man whose discoveries opened up new trade routes that actually shifted the focus of European trade away from here on the Mediterranean and out to the Atlantic. And in doing so, actually contributed to the downfall of this city as a great trading power. But thriving Barcelona has clearly recovered. Just beyond the Columbus Monument, a modern wave-like extension of the boulevard called the Rambla del Mar stretches into the harbor. It leads to a popular mall of shops and eateries. A generation ago, Barcelona's waterfront was an industrial wasteland. With impetus provided by the 1992 Olympics, it's been completely transformed. The former Olympic Village, which now houses locals rather than athletes, is marked by Frank Gehry's eye-catching fish.
So, Rich, in addition to being a big language nerd, I'm also a huge Olympics junkie. So I love learning about how the 1992 Olympics kind of helped change the trajectory of Barcelona. But I don't really understand how exactly that happened. How did the Olympics spur that?
well, there was a lot of changes in the infrastructure of the city. So the airport was expanded and improved. The subway system, the metro was improved, and the whole city kind of had a facelift. They redid the whole waterfront area, which was very industrial before, and they built this series of man-made beaches. And the former Olympic Village is now condos and apartments. So they really did take advantage of the Olympics, where a lot of cities maybe kind of let the Olympic area kind of become derelict. Barcelona really took advantage of it, I think.
Interesting. And so you could stay in the former athletes village and maybe sleep where some very, very famous Olympians have slept previously.
Maybe, yeah.
I wish that they like kept track of like whose room was whose. That would be interesting. And then additionally, seeing this big, beautiful beach here that replaced, as Rick said, the industrial wasteland. Would you say if somebody's doing a trip to Catalunya, they want to budget in just a relaxing beach day, would this be a good place to do it? Or would you recommend getting outside of the city for a beach day?
Really depends on how much time you have. But certainly I would say going to the beach for a day would be worth it. It's so convenient because it's so close to the central part of the city. And they're beautiful beaches. And even if you're not interested in laying in the sun at the beach, there's a beautiful promenade that goes all along the beach lined with different seafood restaurants, and you can bike it or walk it or jog it. So it's a wonderful place to spend the day.
I remember loving the beach in Barcelona, but one memory that I have of it is one of my friends sat down and just set her purse down for about 30 seconds and it was gone. I know that Barcelona is kind of notorious for pickpocketing. How can travelers make sure that they don't fall prey to pickpockets while they're in Barcelona?
I think mainly it's being aware of your surroundings. So like your friend, she put her purse down and wasn't paying attention. And some young pickpocketer saw the convenience of it and nabbed it. So as Rick would always preach, wear your money belt, especially on the subway, on the metro, and in touristy areas. But just being aware of your surroundings. Don't keep anything of value in your backpack or your purse. I would have that stuff in my money belt or locked in my hotel safe.
Excellent. All right. Well, hopefully we'll avoid pickpockets in the rest of our virtual tour. Hopefully there are no Barcelona-based hackers. Here we go.
The man-made beaches, a series of crescents that stretch for miles, are a huge hit. Each comes with lively cafes and bars, and all are laced together by inviting promenades, much appreciated by strollers, joggers, and bikers. Surprisingly nearby is Barcelona's gritty old center, the Gothic Quarter. It's a tangled yet inviting grab bag of charming squares, rowdy schoolyards, rich cultural treasures, and other surprises.
So, Rich, for me, it doesn't matter where in Europe I am. My favorite thing to do is find the oldest, most tangled part of the city and just to walk through the narrow, niggling alleyways. So I love the Barri Gothic, the Gothic neighborhood quarter in Barcelona. How did it get its name?
It got its name because it's the oldest part of the city. It was the old Roman village and the old Gothic center of the city. You can still see some of the Roman remains there in the stones. And it does still retain a lot of its old world feel. Some of the streets are very touristy, but when you walk down some of the smaller streets, you really do feel like you're stepping back in time.
So it manages to kind of retain some of its old character.
Yes, definitely.
And do you recommend for travelers, is this the place to set up your home base? Would this be a good place to find your lodging?
I wouldn't necessarily want to stay right in the Barrio Gothic. A lot of the hotels that we recommend in our guidebook are just on the fringes of it. So just not even a block away from the entrance to the Barrio Gothic. And they're just a little more comfortable because they're going to be bigger. The Barrio Gothic is very small and compact. So there are some small boutique hotels or Airbnbs you could stay in, but they're probably going to be a little smaller than another hotel that you could get in the Eixample or just on the outside of the Barrio Gothic.
And I would imagine then that, if you're on the outskirts, you can easily get to kind of public transportation to other parts of the city, or just as easily go for a stroll further into the Gothic Quarter.
Exactly. Yeah, there's subway stops really nearby where there's not any right in the Barrio Gothic.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's finish our little stroll of the Gothic Quarter.
Street musicians take advantage of the stony acoustics. And the old town is truly old. Two bold towers date back to the Roman era. These were part of the old Roman wall that protected the city in ancient times. The big stones at the base were laid in the 4th century. And tucked away in a courtyard embedded in a nondescript office building is a bit of the temple which once crowned Roman Barcelona, still standing tall.
So Rich, as with one great thing about Europe is a lot of these sites have been around for hundreds of years. They're going to be around for hundreds more, so they stay fairly evergreen. But there are things that change and evolve about the cities. And next we're going to see, so Rick filmed this episode in 2008. And 8 years later, in 2016, he was back on Las Ramblas, that pedestrian street, and was showcasing a little bit how the city had changed and evolved. And so I want to kind of take a look at that video now and compare the two.
Great.
Hi, I'm Rick Steves. I'm in Barcelona at the Ramblas with my guide, Jose Solar. Hola. Hola. And Jose and I are walking down the Ramblas, and you know, the Ramblas, everybody loves the Ramblas, but there's a big change. I'm standing right here on what used to be the Ramblas of the little birds, and Jose, there's no more little birds.
No more little birds, no?
What happened?
Well, animal rights, I imagine, but the replacement for that was this...
all this kind of tacky stuff. This is the closest thing to little birds we can find. But the reality is there was a charm of the Ramblas, and now it's been overtaken by happy tourists. But the downside of that is there's no local people to buy the little birds. There's no local people to keep the market vibrant. There's no local people to give it that venerable, rooted character that everybody fell in love with on the Ramblas. It's still a great place to check out. But really, the Ramblas is now the domain of the tourists. Happy travels from Barcelona.
So Rick says that Las Ramblas is now the domain of the tourist. And we heard, especially pre-pandemic, in a lot of headlines about the over-tourism in places like Venice and Amsterdam and Florence and Barcelona. What are your thoughts on over-tourism, and how can people still enjoy some of these popular cities and still get an authentic feel, but maybe avoid some of the crowds?
So I think it's very true. A lot of these cities have become very touristy, and a lot of it is due to cruise ships. Those cruise ship people go back to their ships at night. So if you stay in the city center, this is especially true in a city like Venice. Barcelona's a little different in that it's such a big city. There's a lot of tourists actually staying in the city. But there are corners of the Barrio Gothic, if you just go off some of the main streets and explore those little back alleyways and those little back lanes, it does feel like you are still in this sort of atmospheric old part of the city that I find very unique. And there are some lesser touristy spots in the city that you can visit to kind of get away from a lot of the tourist hordes.
And I understand that you have some photos for us of both some of the popular and some of the more off the beaten path sites that people can explore.
Yeah, so the first slide here is a picture of the La Boqueria market, which is the market Rick was touring. And it definitely, I would say, is very touristy now. Used to be, it was more, you'd see fish and poultry and fruits and vegetables more geared towards locals buying them, where now it's more items that you can still find fruits and vegetables and things, but it's more like cups of fruit and tourist junk that maybe tourists are going to want to buy. It doesn't feel like many local people go there anymore. Very close by, just a few blocks actually from La Boqueria market, in the El Born neighborhood, you have the Santa Catarina market. It's very close to the Barcelona Cathedral, and it's much less touristy than La Boqueria. Has this beautiful clamshell kind of mosaic top. And then this trip, I did Rick's walking tour of the Eixample, which I hadn't done before. And on that walking tour, you go to La Concepcion market, which was not touristy at all. And I don't know if this was just a factor of COVID, that less people were there than in normal times. Definitely felt a little less crowded in Barcelona than it has been 2.5 years ago when I was there last. But this market seemed like there were no tourists in there. This is the middle of the day on a weekday. I think it was a Friday I was in there, and you can see there's hardly anyone in there. And the people that were in there were not tourists. They were locals buying their groceries. So this is someplace easily that you could go that's not that far away. You can easily walk here from the Barrio Gothic. It's a little, it's a trek, but it's not too far. And if you're doing Rixai-Champlain walk, it's right on the walk. It's going to take you right there anyway. So you could kind of go to the Boqueria market to kind of see the touristy side of it. And then you could come to a market like this to kind of see a more authentic market. The Sagrada Familia is certainly one of the most touristy sites in Barcelona, one of the most visited sites. But I had noticed a change from when I was here 2.5 years ago. This tower on the right, the Mary Tower, was not there 2.5 years ago. Just the bottom of it was being built. And it was really nice to see this completed. It's actually very beautiful. The top has this glass and metal star that I imagine at night is all lit up. I wasn't there at night to see it. Another one of the Gaudí buildings, Casa Mila or La Pedrera, also very popular, very touristy to see. But you could still buy tickets online. I bought tickets on this trip just a couple hours before. I decided on the spur of the moment to go, and I was able to get in. When I went there with my pre-purchased ticket on my smartphone, I saw a line kind of going around the building at the ticket buyer's window, and I just walked right up to the ticket holders line and got right in. So definitely buying your tickets ahead, even if it's just a day or so, is important to do. Casa Batlló, another one of the Gaudí popular buildings. Another one that when I was here 2.5 years ago, I did the same thing. I just thought, I just want to see how hard it is to get a ticket. Spur of the moment, I went, I was at breakfast in my hotel, and I just went online, and I was able to buy a ticket for 2 hours later and walked right in. So it was definitely crowded. There was a lot of people inside, but I was able to get a ticket. Park Güell, another very popular Gaudí site, is another site that we recommend booking tickets ahead. But on this trip, I did the same thing. I just booked a ticket the morning I wanted to go, and 2 hours later, I just was inside. So it wasn't as difficult as I expected, certainly not as difficult in past years. But there are some sites that if you want, especially now during COVID times, people are a little more concerned about being in really crowded public spaces. This is Gaudí's very first building that he ever designed. It's called Casa Vicens. And I visited it 3 years ago when I was in Barcelona. It had just opened to the public, and there was only 3 people in it when I went to visit 3 years ago.
I'm kind of shocked it has some right angles.
Yeah, usually Gaudí doesn't have any right angles, right? And then this is just on the right-hand side is one of the rooms in there. This was not a furnished building, but this, I really liked this blue room. It was the Morocco room, and it was all decorated in sort of Moroccan style with different lanterns and tiles. And it was just the fact that I could just buy a ticket the morning I went there and walk in and only have 3 other people in there.
And if you like the Morocco room, join us for Monday Night Travel on July 11th when we go to Morocco.
Another popular modernist building, this one is not done by Gaudí, but it's right next to Casa Batlló and much less touristed. So when I was here this time, you couldn't go inside. It's called Casa Amatier, and you couldn't go inside and tour it, which you usually can, but there's a chocolate shop in the base, and you could go into the chocolate shop. So I definitely went in there and bought some chocolate.
Yeah, that just jumped up a few spots in my list of buildings to visit in Barcelona.
But the thing I find interesting, especially, is it's right next door to Casa Batlló, which is packed with tourists. And this one, hardly anyone goes inside, but also a very unique building. The Palace of Catalan Music is another modernist building, and it is definitely visited, especially if you wanted to see a concert here. I would say you would want to book it ahead. But I just booked a ticket the morning of again, and did an English language tour of it. I hadn't been inside of it before, and it was beautiful, and it wasn't packed with people. Inside, you have this beautiful stained glass ceiling, and there was just so detailed. Up in the top where you see the little ceramic flowers, they had put, later they had added air conditioning holes, but everything was detailed, typical modernist Art Nouveau style. And then another visited site, this isn't a modernist site, but another museum of just Catalan art is the Catalan Art Museum up on Montjuic. And this museum is never very crowded. And you can easily go in there, see some beautiful art, as well as the front, they have these very nice fountains. At night, they're all lit up, and you have this beautiful view of Barcelona from up on the hill in front of the museum. In the same area on Montjuic, you have the Joan Miró Foundation, another local Catalan artist, also a museum that's not very crowded and you don't have to book tickets ahead. Very modern style of art, so it's not to everyone's taste, but I find it kind of interesting and just refreshing to go into a museum that's not packed with people.
All right, and now that we've seen some of that art, let's pop back to Barcelona and see some of it in its context in the Eixample neighborhood.
The 19th century was a boom time for Barcelona. By 1850, the city was busting out of its medieval walls. A new town called the Eixample, or expansion, was planned to follow a grid-like layout. Wide sidewalks, graceful shade trees, chic shops, and plenty of Art Nouveau frills make the carefully planned Eixample district a refreshing break from the dense old city.
So, Rich, when people, I know many of our hotel recommendations in our guidebook are either for the Eixample or kind of around the Gothic Quarter. How should people make the decision of where to stay between those two main neighborhoods?
I would say if you're more interested in the Gaudí sites and a lot of the modernist buildings, the Eixample is a really nice choice because you're right there. Your hotel's right there. And there's a lot of hotels in that area. If you wanted to be closer to the Barrio Gothic, you're still not that far away. So I don't think you can really go wrong. All the hotels we list in our guidebook are very centrally located. So it's not like you have to travel all the way across town to visit one of these other sites.
All right, well, let's explore the Eixample.
Building corners were snipped off to create light and spacious 8-sided squares at every intersection. The vision of the Eixample was to have everything equally accessible to everyone. Each district of about 20 square blocks would have its own market, hospital, schools, park, and daycare. While the original vision was an egalitarian one where each zone was equal, the Eixample became an architectural showcase for its wealthy residents. While adhering to height and width limitations, they built as they pleased, often in the trendy style of the day, modernisme. Modernisme is the Catalan version of Art Nouveau, which flourished across Europe in the late 19th century. Barcelona was the capital of modernisme, and especially here in the Eixample, it shimmers with its characteristic colorful, leafy, flowing, and blooming shapes. Several of Barcelona's top mansions line the boulevard Passeig de Gràcia. Because the structures look as though they're trying to outdo each other in creative twists, locals nicknamed this stretch the Block of Discord. Barcelona is an architectural scrapbook of the galloping gables and organic curves of the most famous modernista architect, hometown boy Antoni Gaudí. His Casa Milà is Barcelona's quintessential building from this era. Casa Milà is open to the public. It shows how the organic sensitivities of modernista architecture flowed into the domestic world. This apartment would have been rented by a wealthy businessman. It shows how the affluence of the industrial age was enjoyed on a personal level, at least by the upper class. Now an apartment could be a small palace. Gaudí's most famous work is his unfinished Church of the Holy Family, or Sagrada Familia. He worked on it for over 40 years until his death in 1926. Work continues on the church, which is not expected to be completed for another 50 years. The Nativity facade, the only part of the church essentially finished in Gaudí's lifetime, shows the architect's original vision, mixing Christian symbolism, images from nature, and the organic flair of modernisme. It's an impressive example of Gaudí's unmistakable style. The more modern Passion facade has a different, yet complementary style. In the soaring nave, Gaudí's columns blossom with life. Gaudí was a devout Catholic. Part of his religious vision was a love for nature. He said, nothing is invented, for it's written in nature first. His little windows let light filter in like the canopy of a rainforest, creating space for an intimate connection with God. Stepping into this monumental construction zone, visitors see the slow and steady progress and what their steep admission fee is funding. Like the construction of great churches through the ages, this project takes many lifetimes. Gaudí knew he'd never see it finished, as do the architects working on it today. Yet they all contribute, pushing steadily toward completion. Someday, a central 550-foot tall Tower of Jesus will rise above all this. It'll dwarf everything we see today. The vision, to shine like a spiritual lighthouse, visible even from out at sea. If there's one building on Earth I'd like to see, it's Sagrada Familia, finished.
So, Rich, when I was last in Barcelona, I heard a projection that they were hoping to finish by 2026. That's kind of just around the corner now. Do you have any updates? Is that still the case, or have they pushed it back?
It's still the projected, that's what they're shooting for. That's the 100th anniversary of Gaudí's death. And it was slowed a little bit due to COVID because they didn't have any income coming in for about a year and a half when the church was closed. But there's been a big push to get it finished. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see if they can actually finish it in 4 years.
So have they already started on that huge tower that supposedly will dwarf all the others?
Yeah, in fact, you can see the base of it when you're there. But it's going to be amazing when it's done. I can't even imagine what that's going to look like.
Well, start planning your trips for 2026.
But what's interesting is on this video, because this was 8 years ago, you can see the interior still looks really unfinished. Now the interior is pretty much done. There's stained glass windows on both sides, and there are these big light fixtures on the top of the pillars, and it looks a lot different than it does in this video.
Well, I guess it would be fun to kind of go back and see its evolution.
Definitely.
Wonderful. All right, let's continue on to see some more Gaudí sites.
For a more playful dose of Gaudí's architectural genius, we're heading out to his colorful Parc Güell. While today the grand stairway and its welcoming lizard are overwhelmed by fun seekers, Gaudí intended this 30-acre garden to be a 60-residence housing project, a kind of gated community. Fanciful viaducts complement the natural landscape. Gaudí actually lived in this mansion. As a high-end housing development, the project flopped. But a century later, as a park, it's a huge success. As you wander, imagine that the community succeeded and you were one of its lucky residents. Here at the Hall of 100 Columns, the intended produce market, you'd enjoy the fanciful columns and decor while you did a little shopping. Heading home, you'd stroll down the playful arcade. Like a surfer's perfect tube, it's another nature-inspired Gaudí fancy. And on such a beautiful day, you'd sit a spell on Gaudí's ergonomic benches to enjoy a grand view of this grand city.
So, Rich, I just love going through Parc Güell. It makes me feel like I'm Alice in Wonderland. But these kind of gingerbread-looking houses are making me a little bit hungry. So I think that it is time for us to explore the tapas scene in Barcelona. Shall we explore some tapas and kind of get our
Certainly.
wet our palates? Here we go.
Barcelona boasts an enticing variety of tapas bars. Some are colorful holes in walls, giving a glimpse of the crusty Barcelona from before its recent prosperity took hold. Each seems to have a specialty. Here, it's little plates of delicious sardines and glasses of rustic wine straight from the keg. Really cheap, yet rich with memories. Some are from a different region of Spain, like this Basque bar serving delightful little open-faced sandwiches. Hungry diners grab a stool, make a friend over a caña, that's a glass of local draft beer, and happily succumb to the temptation as fresh platters are paraded out of the kitchen. In these places, just let the toothpicks pile up. When it's time to pay, simply count your toothpicks. And most popular these days are the modern and trendy tapas bars. Eaters cobble together a tasty meal of little plates. The key here, variety.
All right, Rich. I am quite hungry now. I would like to know when you go to a tapas bar in Barcelona, what is your favorite kind of tapa to get?
Oh, there's so many, but I would say my favorite is probably tortilla.
Mine is tortilla española as well. Yeah, my mama would always make me tortilla española. And I understand we have some tapas with us here today. We have a little parade of tapas, a few courses as it should be. And first up, we have tortillas. Now, I can tell some of our viewers are saying, that does not look like a tortilla to me.
That's not a tortilla.
What is a tortilla española?
So it's, of course, looks very different than what we consider a Mexican style tortilla. It's basically a frittata made with thinly sliced potatoes, maybe some onion and eggs.
Okay.
Cooked in usually a cast iron pan, and it's delicious.
My Spanish mama, she would always make Spanish tortilla for me, and then she'd take the leftovers and she'd literally just slice open part of a baguette and put it in. And it was a tortilla sandwich was my lunch the next day. So I'm going to serve us up some tortilla. And I think we have our next tapa on its way. And it looks like a croqueta.
A croqueta. So croquetas are a very typical type of tapa. This is a big croqueta. This is a pretty big size one. They're usually about half this size. And they're little balls of bechamel sauce with different things inside of them. So usually it'll have ham or maybe some type of fish or cheese. These are a vegetarian one, I believe.
Yes, these ones are goat cheese. I'm a vegetarian. Tapas are great, but you have to be careful of croquetas. They're kind of little breaded mystery balls. You never know if there's meat in it or not. So
it's a surprise.
This one is goat cheese. I remember it comes from Ocho, which is a restaurant in Seattle that does great tapas. So I will divide up this croqueta for us, and it looks like our next tapa platter is on its way.
So these are very typical little tapas that you would see. Some olivas or aceitunas, big Spanish olives with the pits in them, really delicious. And I've never seen so many types of olives in my life as they have in Spain. And even if you don't like olives, I would strongly suggest tasting them when you go to Spain. Very different. Also, we have some manchego cheese, which is a sheep's cheese, very typical of Spain. And some Macarena almonds.
Wonderful. Grab
covered in
for
olive
yourself.
oil.
There we
Delicious.
go. Get some manchego.
And the thing I like about tapas is you're just getting like little bites of different things. And if there's something you really like, you can get a larger portion, which is called a ración.
Ración.
Yeah.
Like a ration.
Like a ration, exactly. And it's just a bigger portion of the tapa.
All right. And last up, we have some pan tomate.
Pan tomate, or what they call in Barcelona, pan tomquet. I'm sorry, I'm saying it wrong, but it really comes from southern Spain, and it is a baguette that's been toasted, and then they rub some garlic on it, and they actually take a raw tomato with a cheese grater, and they grate the tomato on top of the bread, and then they sprinkle some olive oil and some sea salt.
And I can attest, this one was made by Rich Earl himself. I saw him in Rick Steves Europe HQ kitchen grating a tomato not 2 hours ago. So
it's actually really easy to make, and it's a very popular breakfast dish, especially in the south. So in the south of Spain, Spaniards aren't really big breakfast people. They don't eat large breakfast, but one of the things they'll have is a little café con leche with some pan de tomate.
All right, well, we have our little plates of tapas assembled now. So cheers.
Bon
Salud.
appetit.
Bon appetit. And we are going to enjoy this as we're not done with our tapas yet. In fact, we're going to follow Rick on back to the very back of a tapas restaurant as he does some very mouth-watering research. Definitely this next clip is one that makes me a little jealous of Rick's job.
Wait, let me just
Yeah.
put some wine
Pour
in
me
this.
some
Otherwise,
wine here, Caesar. Very important.
yes. Otherwise it look
No,
like,
yeah.
like the poor family. Right?
I'm Rick Steves, hard at work in Barcelona
Yeah.
with Christina
Hello.
and Marie and Caesar, like the
No.
salad.
Like the salad,
No, like
yeah.
the emperor.
No.
And we're just eating Catalunian style here. And of course, we have good wine. And this is not Rioja because that's in Spain, España. This is Catalunian.
That's Priorat wine. That is like Priorat wine.
Priorat. And it's 2 hours south
And
of
2
Barcelona.
hours south of Barcelona, and it's very, very rich. I mean, the wine has got a lot of tannins. It's made with Grenache.
Okay, now you're a tour guide and you can talk forever, but I got to go really fast. But we are surrounded by wine, so we've got good wine here. And this is tapas style, and it's a little bit traditional. In Catalunya, we have tomat,
Pan tomacat.
pan tomat. So that's
Pan tomacat.
and this is like toast with beautiful tomato and some garlic or something or what?
Sometimes not this one, that is tomato and olive oil.
Yeah, and it's with every meal. And this is my favorite thing when I come to anywhere in Spain. This is pimiento de padrón.
Pimientos del padrón. Unos pican y otros no.
And-
Some are spicy, some are not.
So it's dangerous. It's like Russian roulette for your taste buds. This could be very hot. But it's not. And then we just have just a delightful spread. And we've already eaten it all because it's so good. But this is the convivial Catalunian and Spanish way to eat. It's called tapas. Tapas. Happy travels from Catalunya.
All right, Rich. Well, now that we've gotten our fill of Barcelona, figuratively, but now also literally, I think it's time for us to get out of the city and find a few more kind of serene, relaxing parts of Catalunya to finish up our tour with.
Let's do it.
And let's start in the mountains with Montserrat.
An hour inland from Barcelona takes us to a mountain stronghold, which many consider the heart of Catalunya. A teleferique zooms visitors up to the dramatically situated monastery of Montserrat. Montserrat means the serrated mountain, and you see why as you approach. Hymns explain how the mountain was carved by little angels with golden saws. Geologists blame nature at work. With its dramatic mountaintop monastery and spiritual connection with the Catalan people and their struggles, Montserrat is a rewarding day trip from Barcelona. It's been Catalunya's most important pilgrimage site for 1,000 years.
So, Rich, now that you have a nice mouthful of pan tomat, I'm wondering, Rick says that Montserrat is doable as a day trip from Barcelona. Would that be a pretty long day trip? How does one get to Montserrat?
It's a pretty full day to go there, I would say. You can easily get there by public transportation from Barcelona. You can go into the Barcelona tourist office in the Plaza de Catalunya, the main tourist office. And the day you want to go, just go and you buy what's called a totes ticket. And it is a ticket that includes all the public transit there and back, as well as entrance to the monastery. And you can even buy a ticket that includes lunch up there. So you take a train, you take a subway from the Plaza de Catalunya to the Plaza de España, where the train station is. And it's a little over an hour train ride to get to the base of Montserrat. And then you have to choose at the time you buy your ticket if you're going to take the cable car or you're going to take the rack railway. And people always ask me in my consulting job, what's the best way to get there? Which one should I take? I've done both of them, and I would say they're similar. I would say if you're scared of heights, I would not take the cable car simply because it's a little cage on a cable. But I like the cable car. That's my way to go up. And then if you wanted to just tour the monastery, there's a boys choir that sings usually at around 1. Small museum there. You could have lunch. Also, there's some really nice hiking trails just above the monastery. You can take another little rack railway up to those. So you could easily spend the entire day, especially if you want to do some hiking.
All right, well, let's spend a little bit more time in Montserrat right now.
The monastery was destroyed by Napoleon. Then in the 1850s, the monks returned as part of Catalunya's and Europe's renewed romantic appreciation of things religious, medieval, and nationalistic. They rebuilt the place, and Montserrat became once again the spiritual and cultural heart of the Catalan people. a handful of Benedictine monks carry on the monastery's spiritual tradition. Since 1025, the slogan, Ora et labora, prayer and work, pretty much sums up life for a monk up here. The Benedictines welcome visitors, both pilgrims and tourists, in hopes that they'll experience the spiritual power of Montserrat. Montserrat's top attraction is La Moreneta, a small wood statue of the Black Virgin, discovered here in the 12th century. Legend says she was carved by St. Luke, but carbon dating says she's only 800 years old. Pilgrims circulate down a long and ornate passage leading alongside the church for their few moments alone with the Virgin. Pilgrims touch the Virgin's orb to seek Mary's blessing.
All right, Rich, now we're gonna go from the mountains down towards the coast, and from the sacred to kind of the absurdist. We're gonna go see some Salvador Dalí sites. So let's take a look at Figueres and Cadaqués.
For a radically different slice of Catalunya, we're heading north up the Costa Brava. The town of Figueres has the Salvador Dalí Museum, the essential Dalí site. Ever the entertainer and promoter, Dalí personally designed, decorated, and painted it to showcase his life's work. He was buried right here in the floor of this room in 1989, and the museum serves as a mausoleum to the artist's creative spirit. When Salvador Dalí was asked, "Are you on drugs?" he replied, "I am the drug. Take me." Dalí produced some of the most thought-provoking and trailblazing art of the 20th century. His surrealistic imagery continues to disturb and intrigue to this day. The best known of the surrealists, Dalí created photorealistic images set in bizarre dreamscapes. His life changed forever in 1929 when he met an older Russian woman named Gala. She became his wife, muse, model, manager, and emotional compass. An audience of golden statues looks down on the museum. Above Dalí's personal 1941 Cadillac hangs the boat enjoyed by Dalí and his soulmate, Gala. When she died, he was devastated. Below the boat drip blue tears. Squint at the big digital Abraham Lincoln, and he comes into focus. Look closer, and you see Abe's facial cheeks are Gala's other cheeks. The Homage to Mae West room is a tribute to the sultry seductress. Dalí loved her attitude. She was to conventional morality what he was to conventional art. Facial features are furniture, arranged so that from the intended vantage point, everything comes together. Mae West. The ceiling of the lounge is a highlight. It shows Gala and Dalí as they reach for the heavens. Dalí's drawers are wide open and empty, indicating he gave everything to his art. Dalí enjoyed his most creative years nearby in the fishing village of Cadaqués, which has long been a haven for intellectuals and artists alike. Its craggy coastline, sun-drenched colors, and laid-back lifestyle inspired artists from Matisse and Duchamp to Picasso. For today's tourists, mellow Cadaqués offers a peaceful beach town escape near Barcelona.
So, Rich, I guess Cadaqués is in the same region as Barcelona, so near Barcelona. Would you say that it's day trippable from Barcelona, or should you plan to stay the night there?
I would say Figueres is definitely day trippable. It's only about an hour. And if you want to see the Salvador Dalí Museum, definitely reserve that ahead and go up and see that. But Cadaqués is a bit more difficult to get to. It's another hour by taxi from Figueres down a very twisty mountain road. And in the summer, when there's a lot of tourists there, it could sometimes maybe take 3 hours to get there.
Oh, wow.
One of the taxi drivers told me on this trip that he was there last summer, or 2 summers ago, before COVID. And he said took him over 3 hours to bring a fare to Cadaqués. one way. So it's a little bit far for a day trip. And I would say it's worth staying a night or two. It's a beautiful, very relaxing town. And it would be really easy to go for just like a weekend getaway or a midweek getaway. If you were coming from France by train, you could eat the trains all stop in Figueres. So you could get off in Figueres, spend a couple nights in Gothic, and then continue on to Barcelona and see your main sightseeing in Barcelona. But I definitely, after visiting it on this trip, I definitely would not go as a day trip.
So good to know. Montserrat, Figueres, day trippable. Gothic, you should plan to stay overnight.
Yeah.
All right.
In the 1920s, Salvador Dalí and Gala moved in, bringing international fame to this sleepy Catalan port. Casa Dalí shows how a home can reflect the creative spirit of an artistic genius and his muse. His studio was equipped with an innovative easel. It cranked up and down to allow the artist to paint while seated, as he did 8 hours a day. The bohemian yet divine living room comes complete with a mirror to reflect the sunrise onto their bed each morning.
So, Rich, I've toured a lot of residences in Europe. Oftentimes it's these grand palaces, which are beautiful, but after you've seen 2 or 3, you kind of get the gist of it. They're a bit repetitive.
Yeah.
Obviously, Dalí's home seems extremely unique, and I know that you were there recently. Can you describe to us just kind of the experience of being there? What was it like? What were the things that specifically stuck out to you?
I think it felt like a real person lived there. I mean, it was definitely eclectic and a little bizarre, like Dalí himself, but it's been left just like it was when he left in 1982 after Gala died. The only thing they did was take out the books and the artwork. Other than that, it looks exactly, supposedly, I wasn't there when he lived there, but supposedly it looks just like it did when he lived there. So it's quirky. It's a little, it's not, I would say, showy like a palace where you have this beautiful artwork and everything is perfect. It's a little eclectic and odd, like he was. So it definitely felt like a real person actually lived in this house to me.
Well, I always appreciate when people can, make their space a reflection of who they are, and it certainly seems like he accomplished that.
Definitely.
Like Dalí's art, his home defies convention. And like the artist himself, it's playful and provocative.
All right, Rich. So I understand that, as I said, you were recently on the Costa Brava in some of these places, and that you are going to finish up by sharing with us some photos of those places and also some photos of another nice little beach town that people can go to if they want a relaxing retreat away from Barcelona.
Certainly. So I did spend 3 days in Cadaqués between my tours, and I found it a very relaxing spot. It was perfect. Tours can be kind of busy and stressful, and so it was exactly what I needed. It was a great place to just relax. There's not a lot to see as far as sights other than Gaudí's house, but the town itself is filled with little twisty, windy back streets that really had hardly anyone on them. So it's a wonderful place to just wander and explore. And also the coastline here was very kind of rugged and jagged, and lots of little walking paths and trails. And it was a really nice place to just wander and spend the day out looking at the sea. It's very peaceful. And of course, his house itself is the main site. You do have to reserve it. They only let a certain number of people in at a time, but I just reserved it 2 days before I went. And it was quite, interesting to see. And I would say I only spent maybe 2 hours there. It was a quick walk from Cadaqués itself. And then inside the house, of course, just like we saw in Rick's slides, it's pretty much left like it was when he lived there. I thought this parasol was really interesting, how he mounted it above the stairway. It was a gift from the Japanese ambassador when he visited him. He had a lot of famous people visit him here in the house. I don't have a picture of their their closet room, their wardrobe room. But that was fascinating because Gala had decorated all the walls and doorways with pictures of them with famous guests and all like the magazine covers that he was on. So it was kind of interesting to walk through there and look at the photos and see who had visited, all the famous people that visited him. And many of them brought him gifts, which he had spread throughout the house. And then the patio, the backyard area, very kind of eclectic like him. You have these Pirelli tire signs, and then the lip seat, and then this little reproduction of the lion fountain that you see in the Alhambra.
Oh, yes.
And then these old sherry bottles that he had perched above them.
Interesting.
So the whole place was, I just thought, very unique and very interesting to see, very different. And he was fascinated with the shape, with eggs in their shape. It was what I think he said it was the perfect shape of nature. Eggs and sea anemone shells. So that's why you see the eggs also on the decorating his museum in Figueres.
I've seen photos of this so many times and I just never put it together that those were eggs. It's like a Humpty Dumpty situation if one of those gets knocked over.
That's right. And then about half an hour south of Barcelona is the little seaside town of Sitges. And this would be very easy to do as a day trip. It's only half an hour by local train, so you don't need to book the trains ahead. You can just buy them. They go pretty regularly, I'd say at least hourly. And it's just a really pretty little beach town. Lots of beautiful beaches stretching for miles and little twisty lanes. It's a big gay resort town. So sometimes of the year there'll be big parties going on, but quite often it's very peaceful and quiet, especially in the off season.
Happy Pride, everybody.
Happy Pride. It is Pride Week.
Pride Month.
Pride Month.
Oh, and Pride Week for us, yeah.
And then also like sort of Gothic and a lot, even the Barrio Gothic, twisty, windy little streets that you can just explore. And I just thought some of the architecture here was beautiful. I love this street with the little arch bridge crossing it. Just a beautiful little town to spend a couple days in. So you could do it as a day trip, or you could go spend a couple days there if you wanted something a little smaller than Barcelona, a small town feel.
Excellent. Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing those nice little day trips. As I always say, I like to have a vacation from my vacation sometimes.
Exactly.
It's fun to do all the sightseeing, but a day or two at a nice small beach town at the end of some long sightseeing is always welcome. Well, thank you for that tour of Barcelona, Rich. I want to remind everybody that the presenting sponsor of Monday Night Travel is, and will continue to be, Rick Steves Europe. We're going to get to the Q&A in a second, but already there was a question from Gary asking if the unguided My Way tours are offered by Rick Steves, and if there are tours like this outside of Spain. So I'm going to give my plug for Rick Steves Tours. Yes, the My Way tour itineraries are through Rick Steves Europe. You can find them if you go to ricksteves.com/tour. And we have, I believe, 3 others. I think we have a My Way France, My Way Italy, and the Alpine My Way.
Yeah. All fantastic itineraries.
All fantastic. And if you do go on the My Way Spain, you never know, you might have Rich as your guide. I also want to remind people that we have excellent guidebooks. It's how I got hooked on Rick Steves Europe. We have our big Spain guidebook, which I've used before, but we also have a couple that are specific to Barcelona. If you're just going for 2 or 3 days, I recommend the Pocket Guidebook. If you're going for a little bit longer or are just an information junkie, we have the full-sized Barcelona guidebook.
And both the Spain book and the Barcelona guidebook have chapters on Gothic and Figueres, as well as Sitges. So great resources if you're planning your trip there on your own.
All right. Now, Rich, I see that we have some great questions for you. As often happens, our viewers get very excited to go to the destinations that we explore, and they want to know, when should we go? You hear a lot about avoiding southern Spain during the summer months because it gets so hot. But
Definitely.
In Barcelona, you're up in Catalunya, up further north near the coast. What are the best times of year to go to Barcelona and Catalunya?
Well, Barcelona has a very Mediterranean climate, so it's going to be less severe weather than you're going to have in Madrid or the south of Spain. So you can really go to Barcelona anytime. I would say the summer is going to be the busiest time because that's when a lot of Spaniards have their holiday. And so you're going to have a lot of Spanish vacationers going anywhere on the coast. Also, a lot of other European visitors. The French take the whole month of August off generally, so they're going to be going to beach locations. Barcelona is very close to France, so it can be quite busy there. But I would say Barcelona, even in the wintertime, because it's going to be less cold because of the Mediterranean. So it can be quite nice to go in the winter. It can be, I think the best times to go to Spain personally are going to be late April, early May, and then late September, early October. I think that's the best weather.
And in terms of crowds, if people are going, you know, during a busier time, do you feel that some of those more crowded sites, do you think that they're actually worth it? Are they worth the effort to get those timed reservations? Or are there any sites in Barcelona that you think are overhyped?
I think it's definitely important to book reservations ahead in the busy season. I mean, anytime. The Sagrada Familia is one of the most visited sites in Spain. So if your time is limited, most people have very limited time when they're visiting a city. So in Barcelona, you might only have 2 or 3 days. You definitely want to book those reservations ahead. And you're just going to have to realize it is going to be crowded. If you're traveling in the off season, of course, you're going to have less crowds. But if you're traveling, Barcelona is one of those cities that can be busy anytime, especially in the summer when there's a lot of cruise ships in port.
Mike is wondering, first, can you remind us the name of the specific restaurant near La Alhambra that you take your groups?
It's called Carmen Las Tomasas.
Carmen Las Tomasas.
It's in our guidebook, and we list, I think, 3 or 4 Carmens. There's more than that. Carmen de Aixa, A-I-X-A, Aixa, that's another one that's quite nice. And I don't remember the name of the third one. I've been to all 3 of them, but yeah, it's definitely a highlight and very unique to Granada. I would make it part of your itinerary for sure.
And then jumping back to Barcelona, what would you say are some of your favorite restaurants in Barcelona?
There's many favorite restaurants. Probably one of my favorites is the restaurant Rick was eating at with the Catalonian guides, where he was doing the tapas. That one's called Onofre. It's in our guidebook. It's a small family-run restaurant and wine bar, and very nice, very intimate. I would make for most restaurants, I would make reservations for dinner. Okay. And another one for tapas is a Basque tapas called Bilbao Barria in the Barrio Gothic. I really like that a lot. Typical Basque pinchos, tapas. And yeah, those are probably 2 of my favorites. There's also, people often ask me where they can get the best paella. And paella is really something that comes from Valencia, but you can get it all over Spain. And my favorite one in Barcelona is, well, there's a couple places you can get it, but down in the Barceloneta area where the beach is, there's a place called Maison Barceloneta, and they have great paella there they make. Also, the Corte Inglés department store, they have a restaurant on the top floor, and they make their own paella there. And they generally have 3 different kinds of paella. And if you go at lunch, you can just get a scoop of it. You could try different ones. I really like the vegetarian one, which I'm guessing you would like as well.
I would like that as well.
Yeah.
Speaking of food, Susan has a question that I love. We have a great assortment of food in front of us tonight, but we don't actually have a dessert. What is your favorite Spanish dessert? If we could miraculously have one appear in front of us to complete our meal.
It's actually from Catalonia. It's called crema Catalonia, crema catalan.
Crema catalan.
And it's like creme brulee. It's basically the same as creme brulee.
Oh, wonderful. I do love creme brulee.
I do
Does
too.
it have like the little sugar that you crack on top?
It does, yes. It's delicious.
Now, Rich, I know that you've been a consultant for Rick Steves Europe for a long time. I'm going to give you a little consultation on the spot. Jessica says that she's going on a trip and she only has 2 days in Barcelona. With only 2 days in Barcelona, what are the 3 or 4 things that you would really prioritize?
I would say some of the Gaudí sites, definitely. So the Sagrada Familia, maybe Park Güell. I probably wouldn't, unless you're really interested in the modernism stuff, that's probably going to be enough. God, that's not a lot of time. Maybe I don't generally like the hop on, hop off bus tours, but I think Barcelona can be a good city for that because it can connect some of the far out sites like Parkway. Park Well. So you could use the hop on, hop off bus as your transportation to get you to Park Well and the Sagrada Familia, but you could also use it as sort of an overview of the city. And then I would definitely just wander the Barrio Gothic. Just spend at least part of the day wandering through there and having dinner in a little tapas bar, just kind of explore and find one that you like.
We have one viewer who is wondering, if you go to Montserrat, are there places that you can stay the night there, or can you really only do it as a day trip?
You can stay the night there. I haven't done it. So I don't know what the accommodations are like personally, but you can stay the night there. People do.
And we have time for just one more question tonight. And the question comes from Stephanie, who is a viewer that I know has watched the show before and is 9 years old. And Stephanie asked, what is the coolest part of Spain? So I'm gonna twist that question to be beyond Barcelona and Catalunya, which we've explored a lot tonight. What's your next favorite part of Spain?
Definitely Andalusia, the south, specifically Granada and the White Hill towns, the Pueblos Blancos.
And what do you love so much about Andalusia?
It's very different than the rest of Spain. It definitely has that Moorish feel to it. And I just think Granada has this very kind of unique atmosphere that I've never felt anywhere else. It's very, you have the Alhambra, of course, but just the city itself, it just has a very nice feel to it.
Well, if you're interested in Andalusia, we did do a show on Andalusia, I believe back in January. You can find it at ricksteves.com in our Monday Night Travel archives with Concepcion Delgado. But thank you so much for showing us around Barcelona and Catalunya tonight,
You're welcome.
Rich.
Thank you.
So glad that we could have you here with us. And I'd like to remind everybody, we will be back next week when Rick will be back with us. He's back from Europe again, and he's excited to take us on a virtual tour of Amsterdam, one of his favorite cities in Europe. We will have the 4th of July off, but then we'll be back again on July 11th to explore Morocco with Lucas Peters. Thank you for joining us tonight, though, and we look forward to seeing you on another Monday night very soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Adios.
Adios. Adeo.
Adeo.